Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you in my basement, the great state of Kansas. Today I'm doing a live stream to talk about what movies and TV shows I've watched recently. I like to do this every month or so, do a live stream, catch up on everything I've watched. Of course, you can always check me out at my Letterboxd, probably Jason Berger, I think, on there. If you have a Letterboxd app. I know there's quite a bit of people starting to follow me, and I follow a lot of other people that review movies on YouTube, and it's a good place to kind of give your quick thoughts on a movie and rank them. Of course, so if you're on there, you can catch, fairly soon after I watch something, I'll write a review on there. But if not, then I'll do reviews on here as well. Of course, I didn't go to the movie theater and watch any new movies as far as that's concerned. All the stuff I'm watching is off of streaming services and whatever comes on video on demand, basically. But I was able to catch up on some fairly big movies that came out this year. Not good movies necessarily, but some kind of the big ones that were hyped up quite a bit or people talked about a lot. Uh, also watched a couple shows on like Netflix and reality stuff that's pretty good, and HBO as well. Um, I usually don't talk about TV show till it's over, and then I'll talk about the season, how it went, in my opinion, anyway. So I got a couple of that. Definitely, there's some really bad movies on this list that I saw that I was like, wow, these were really terrible movies. And then there's some really good movies too. So I have a kind of a mishmash of stuff to talk about here. Anyway, so given that, we will continue on. Uh, First, got so much stuff to talk about. I'm trying to figure out what I want to go with first. Maybe some more TV shows and stuff that I've watched recently. Uh, First, I wanted to go with uh, let's go with a show, actually a really good show on HBO called Winning Season, The Dynasty of the Lakers, I think it's called. It's an HBO, Max, whatever you want to call it, show. This is the second season, covering the Lakers in the 1980s. Last year was the first season, and I really enjoyed first season. I thought it was one of the best shows that I saw last year. It was in my top 10 favorite shows of the year last year, and the same for this year. This second season was really good as well. Of course, this is maybe just a niche show in a way that I really enjoyed it because it's about basketball, and I'm a big basketball fan, and I'm also love reading about, studying about history and stuff. So I know a little bit about the history. I didn't know everything. I learned a lot through the show, but I do love to, touch up on, the history of basketball and stuff like that, and the NBA and all that. So I kind of knew a little bit about the 80s, this kind of covering the 1980s basketball, and that's when the NBA really took off, I thought, in the 1980s because of two individuals, especially Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, which the show is mostly about Magic Johnson. Larry Bird's in it a little bit as well, but it mainly is covering Magic Johnson and him coming into the league and how the game was changed through him and Larry Bird, I think, in a way. So 1980s basketball, man, that was good basketball when you had those Lakers Celtics rivalry back and forth for the championships. I mean, it's so crazy looking back, and I think in the decade of the 80s, out of like 10 championships, eight of them were won by either Lakers or the Celtics. I mean, and then one other one was Philadelphia 76ers. I think Detroit Pistons won the other one. So, and the 76ers and the Lakers went to the championship game like 3 years in a row or something like that. And then the Celtics went to the championship, I think, 2 years in a row at one point. Anyways, but yeah, it's a really cool era of basketball for me. And I did learn quite a bit through this, and I had to actually research because it's interesting. I think this season they let off a little bit from the first season. First season, the big criticism of the first season was the way they handled these real life people was they made them all really terrible jerks and really horrible human beings. And there's a lot of criticism from people that especially Jerry West was probably the worst one because they really portrayed Jerry West as a really terrible person. And I know Jerry West in real life was like going to sue them because he's like, that was a bad portrayal of me. And maybe it was, maybe, I don't know. I never knew Jerry West to be, he doesn't seem that bad in interviews, but yeah, they made him a bit of a hothead, uh, uncontrollable kind of person. But this season, he's still kind of that way, but I feel like they held back a little bit. I feel like the players didn't look or the characters didn't look as bad. I mean, Larry Bird's also a bit of a jerk in this, and maybe he was in real life. I don't know, but they seem to exaggerate everything quite a bit in the show. I don't know if those are the betrayals. I don't know are exactly realistic or not. But some of the facts are, because I had to look up some of the facts after watching like a show. I go, did that really happen? And I looked it up and I was like, wow, that really happened. And so there's some very fascinating things happening that I didn't know about for the Lakers, anyways. The first season just covered the 1980 season. It's funny, it just covered 1 year because that was a big year. Because that's when Matt Johnson came to the Lakers, and also the first time Jerry Buss took over as the owner of the Lakers, and he kind of changed everything, made everything what you call Showtime, and it became this more entertainment basketball kind of thing, and introduced the Laker girls, and then he had celebrities in the audience like Jack Nicholson, and he was definitely changing things, and of course, they won their championship the very first year Matt Johnson came in 1980, which was crazy for a rookie to come in, win a championship, and be Finals MVP. Like that never happens, and that's what happened for Magic Johnson. Of course, he had like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in there as well, and a lot of other good players. This season, second season, covers basically 81 to 84, so it covers about 3 years. Interesting. First one only 1 year. This one 3 years. And it was very fascinating. It wasn't that long of a season either. I think it was only like 8 episodes long, and but it did a really good job. I think every episode, you put quite a bit of information or quite a bit of stuff came in every episode. So they did a good job of really cramming a lot of stuff into the season for covering 3 years. And it was interesting how they did it because you start with because so much happened. You start with Paul Westhead as the head coach. And like he kind of accidentally became the coach after the first coach got hurt, Jack McKinney, and so Paul Westhead became the coach. And they portray him as being very incompetent. And I don't know. I think they're pretty mean to Paul Westhead. I don't know if he was that bad, but they portray him kind of not being a very good coach. But he ended up being from assistant coach to head coach that first season when they won. So he was a championship coach, but he really was making some really bonehead ideas. And also Magic Johnson got hurt like was that the second year that it was that second year or whatever he got hurt, and so the Lakers really struggled after they won the championship. And then Paul Westhead eventually got fired because he was not getting along, which happened in real life. He wasn't getting along with Magic Johnson, and Magic Johnson was one of the stars, and so that got him fired from the team from Jerry Buss anyways. And then Pat Riley takes over, and it's crazy because all I know is Pat Riley was the head coach for Lakers, but it was crazy how Pat Riley went from like basically a play-by-play announcer to assistant coach to head coach, and now he's considered one of the greatest NBA coaches of all time, and won 4 championships with the Lakers, one with the Heat. So I mean, it's just crazy. Adrian Brody plays Pat Riley, and of course, a great actor himself. But yeah, so that was all fascinating stuff I didn't know about, anyways. And so it's interesting when he took over. Then they won a second championship, and then that happens like early on in the season. They really just gloss over the second championship. They don't really talk about it at all. They really were concentrating on the struggles and also the big rivalry they had with the Celtics and with Larry Bird, and that was pretty interesting. It ends with the '84 finals, which the Celtics win, anyways. So it kind of ends on somewhat negative note for the Lakers losing in it, but still a lot of fascinating stuff happening in there. And like Magic Johnson, he had a kid out of wedlock, which I didn't know, and that really did happen. I was like, wow. So I mean, we know he was what do you call it? Playboy or whatever. He was definitely out there having sex with a lot of women. Of course, eventually got AIDS because of that. And he finally married Cookie though this season as well, which I didn't realize he married her at that point. Anyway, so it covers all that. Yeah, it was very good. I mean, the writing I think is really excellent. I think they didn't do the first season. I felt like they did too much like fourth wall breaking, and they did a little, this and that. And they're definitely very liberal politically, which I didn't like. I feel like this season they held back on that a little bit. I didn't feel like they still did some fourth wall breaks, but I feel like it wasn't obnoxious like it was in the first season at times. And they kind of held back on some of the liberal wokeness that they did in the first season, in a sense. I didn't like in the first season. So I think they did a little that stuff I really enjoyed. But yeah, the acting is really good. Like the guy who plays Magic Johnson, I'm not sure who his name is, really good portrayal of Magic Johnson. I thought totally nailed his character, and as we know him, and his mannerisms and all that, and that was great. And I also, of course, John C. Riley's really kind of the star of this show, playing Jerry Buss. Jerry Buss is kind of a terrible person as they portray him because he's another playboy guy who's sleeping with much younger women, and he goes through like 2 divorces, and he has strange relationships with his kids, and there's definitely some problems there with that character, but John C. Reilly, great performance. I mean, I really think he should get a nomination for like an Emmy. Him and the Magic Johnson actor, like really good performances there. But all around, great writing, great performances. The basketball stuff is actually really quite good, and great casting. I mean, they had to cast all these guys that look like the players. Anyways, I really liked the season. And Slim Shady said something I was going to say, and which is really sad. Is, season 3. There's not going to be any more seasons. So there's only 2 seasons of the show, and it's already canceled. I don't know if it didn't do well or they. It was weird because at the very end of the season 2, because he went to season, because after season 1 you're thinking, I wonder what is the ultimate goal for the show, because actually in the first season, like the very first episode, one of the first things we get is Magic Johnson being told that he has AIDS, and so you're like, okay, is that going to be the end of the season? End of the show. Is they're going to cover the 1980s with Magic Johnson until he has to quit because of AIDS, that would be a good, closer for the show is at the end. So I was like, okay, they're going somewhere interesting with this. And then you go the second season this season, and we're covering 3 years. So I'm like, I thought that was a good idea. Let's try to cover, multiple years per season. I thought this show could last like 4 seasons, and they can cover all the 80s stuff pretty good in about 4 really good seasons. That's what I thought. So shocking at the end of season 2 because I wasn't sure where they're going to end. But until the second last episode, and it was like, oh, okay, they're going to end on the 1984 finals. You can kind of tell, like, okay, that's where they're going to end the season, which is interesting because it's kind of a downer for the Lakers because they lose against their rivals. So it's not good for Laker Nation. But anyway, but I still liked it how they did that. And so it comes to the end, and all of a sudden, like these title cards come up, and it's like, oh, the Lakers won like 3 more championships with Magic Johnson, and and it starts talking about all the people and like what happened to them. I'm like, is this the show finale? Like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is only second season. Aren't there a couple more seasons left? There's so much more story to tell. There's so many more years to talk about. So many more. I want to see more of. In fact, the thing I'm most disappointed about is that the one interesting things is the Magic Johnson Larry Bird rivalry, which is such an interesting story in the 80s in basketball, because they even in college they played for the NCAA championship in 1979, which Magic Johnson and Michigan State won against the Indiana State and Larry Bird. And Larry Bird was like the the MVP of the NCAA, and then we go into their rookie season, and they're on 2 of the best teams. It's just a crazy story, and so they butt heads throughout the 80s, and there's this big rivalry. But then, sometime in the 80s, they started becoming friends, and in fact, right up to the end, they were actually really good friends. And so there's a really cool story and character arc there where they hate each other in the early mid 80s part, but I think somewhere in the late 80s, before Matt Johnson had to quit, they actually become really good pals, and to this day they're like really good friends. And I was really wanting to see that in the show. Like, I was like, okay, this is really cool. I like what they're doing. I'm waiting for a 3rd season where I think they're gonna go through their 85 and 86, and they're playing against each other. And at some point, they're going to change it where they actually start becoming friends, and everything, the whole dynamic changes. And that would have been great, but they didn't get to that. And so it kind of sucked at the end of this season that they're like, oh, by the way, Magic Johnson wins a bunch more championships that we're not going to show you. And I was like, man, we're not going to see any more of those seasons. And him and Larry Bird became friends, and Larry Bird went on, had his Hall of Fame career, of course. And the guy who played Larry Bird did a good job as well. I love the episode that was just about Larry Bird. There was one episode where it was just about Larry Bird winning his championship, and they kind of went away from Magic for a little bit. and they went through Larry Bird's story, which he had like a kind of a tragic story. I guess his dad committed suicide or something like that, and all this. So, and then he wins his championship, and he goes back to where his dad like committed suicide. So there were some cool story moments there for Larry Bird. Yeah, in that one episode. I thought, and I liked Larry Bird was barely in the first season. I feel like this season they gave him more stuff to do, which I really liked, and so I was hoping they would do more with Larry Bird in the third season as well. The actor he played Larry Bird, anyways. But yeah, they're great casting. But yeah, so it's really it's a great show. Really disappointed it ended so quickly on the second season when there's so much more interesting story to be told about this. I love that they came up with this. I love that they were able to do this show about the NBA, which you don't get very often or done very well. I know with Adam McKay, he's a big NBA guy, so it was his kind of passion project to do the show. Yeah, yeah, Indiana championship. Yeah, he hit on the Celtics, and it's like because the Lakers are Magic Johnson. Lakers are the heroes, I guess. I don't know. They're the protagonists of the show. You're rooting, even though I'm not like a Lakers fan. I'm not a Celtics fan, but you're kind of rooting for the Lakers in the show because they're their main characters, kind of in a sense. Yeah, so it ends on them disappointment. So because it's crazy because they lose in '84 against the Celtics, and then they come back, I think, in '85, and they beat the Celtics in the finals or something like that. And then Celtics beat somebody else, I think, in '86, and then the Lakers win in '87, '88. They went back to back. Anyway, so before the Detroit Pistons kind of took over after that, but you know, even then, but I mean, you should have gotten some more. Yeah, you should have ended it on the Lakers, winning or whatever. That would have made more sense. But yeah, still, I recommend the show. Anyways, one of the best shows I've seen this year, in my opinion. Um, so another show. It's another really great show for me. It's not really a show; it's a reality series. I'm going to talk about on Netflix, and it's called Quarterbacks, and it's definitely one of the best things I've seen this year. And that's because I'm very biased, probably because the show, if you don't know, Quarterbacks on Netflix, it covered three different quarterbacks in the last season of the NFL, the 2000, I guess, 22-23 season. And the three quarterbacks are Patrick Mahomes, which is the Chiefs quarterback, which is my team. And Patrick Mahomes is my favorite quarterback of all time. Absolutely love Patrick Mahomes, and I've been a huge fan since he came to the Chiefs, of course, and won 2 Super Bowls. That was it's been just amazing 5 years or whatever that he's been taking over, and so that was great having Patrick Mahomes as one of the subjects. Then you had Kirk Cousins from Minnesota, which I kind of enjoyed Kirk Cousins' story. He had kind of interesting story as well, and he seems like just a really nice guy. So I enjoyed, and Minnesota had a pretty good season. And then Marty Mariota or something like that, who I'm not that familiar with, and he's not particularly that good of a quarterback. So it's interesting that they picked him. He was the lead quarterback, or he was the starting quarterback for Atlanta Falcons for part of the season, and then he got benched because he wasn't doing very good. Then he eventually, quit the team at the end, and he went and signed with somebody else, I think. But so his story wasn't as interesting. I think Kirk Cousins was kind of interesting. But really, the star was Patrick Mahomes, which I loved, because I'm a huge Patrick Mahomes fan. So, man, it was such a blast scene because the show, it was like 8 episodes or something like that. I can't remember, but it kind of went through the whole season. But it showed them off the field, of course, with their families, and kind of you see what their family life is like. He had of course, he's married, and he had 2 kids during this time, or something like that. So he's starting to become a father now. I just got married not that long ago too, so it just all that's kind of new for him, and kind of following his life, and also it's so cool. It's really cool if you're a football fan, of course, because it shows how do they train, what kind of things do they do, how how much work do they have to put in, especially in the playbook. They put so much work into studying the playbook and watching film on other teams and seeing how they play and how they play defense, and and all that, and working on that a lot, of course. And then there's just personal training, and there's also personal rehabbing because he's had some injuries with his ankle, and so he has PhD chiropractors come in, and he has like a couple of them that like work on him. Anyway, so that was all kind of really fascinating, seeing like how does he train, how does he rehab, how does he study, and what kind of time does he put in for all that, and then his family, and seeing all that. And Patrick Mahomes seems like a really cool guy too. I mean, obviously he's putting his best face forward, but uh, from what I know from Patrick Mahomes, I've watched him over the last 5-6 years now. I think this is like his sixth season with the team, or seventh season, but sixth season as the lead, as the starting quarterback. And he's done nothing but been a super good role model. Like I said, married, he has 2 kids now. Seems like a really good family guy. No scandals in his life. Uh, Seems like a nice guy. All that. So really great subject matter, I think. And then it was so fun because last year the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So man, it was a blast watching that and seeing as they go through the season, watching the Chiefs through there's some struggles in there because the Chiefs uh, or Patrick Mahomes hurt his ankle at one point, and towards the end actually, and had some troubles there. And we had a couple struggles in the season, but then we started off, of course, really strong, winning Super Bowl. And so, especially the last episode was, as a Chiefs fan, like I was like crying when I watched the last episode because we get to see the Chiefs beat the Bengals in the AC Championship, which was great because we lost 3 games in a row to the Bengals in 2 years, or something like that. We lost like 3 games in 2 years or 1 year or something crazy. And then we finally beat the Bengals, barely by like 3 points at home. And that was a crazy game. And then we got the Super Bowl, and that was a crazy, tough game. The Eagles were really good. And getting to watch that over again through this documentary, getting to see the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, it was just, for me, very emotional just watching it because I've seen Chiefs win 2 Super Bowls, but for most of my life, the Chiefs have not been very good. So it's been so great this last 5-6 years seeing the Chiefs be really good. And for a sports fan, you get really emotional about that stuff. And I think the part that really got me was after they won the Super Bowl and Mahomes went to hug his dad. Like that part, like I was crying. I was like, oh, that really hit me. And emotionally, seeing that. Anyways, but yeah, I thought it was a really good show. But of course, obviously, if you're a Chiefs fan, you have to watch quarterbacks. It's an amazing show because you get to watch us win the Super Bowl again. Um, so far, we're 2 for 2. No surprise being with us, being sports fans. That's good, Slim Shady. Yeah, if you're a sports fan, these are good shows for you. I know if you're not, I don't know if you like it as much. Um, I'm not a Chiefs fan, but I was by far most interested in Mahomes. Yeah, Mahomes is he's just the best quarterback. I don't know, like I'm biased, but it's just the truth. Like, I mean, obviously, uh, um, what's his name? Brady was the greatest of all time. Now he's retired, so Mahomes has really taken over. I think he's the best quarterback in the NFL today, and it's gonna be hard to take him over. I mean, he's just putting up record numbers every season, and he's got 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and he's 28 years old. And so he's got many more good years in him, and he's going to be breaking records, I think. And he's just so fun to watch too. I mean, it's just a blast, like I said, watching him because he does the craziest throws I've never seen any quarterback throw, and it's just amazing to watch. I think even if you're not a Chiefs fan, it's fun to watch him play. But yeah, even my sister, she likes it, and my sister is not a sports person, so and she liked it. Like I said, it's not just about sports; it's about the quarterback's lives and how they live, and kind of get an inside look in how a quarterback for a team, how they live. One of the most interesting things was like them talking about the playbook, and they would talk about different plays, and they were so complicated that you're like, wow, how can you remember all these plays? I mean, that was maybe the craziest thing. Like, to be an NFL quarterback, you have to study really hard on plays, and you have to have good memory, I think, and you have to be really on your game to know all that, anyways. But yeah, still a really good show, quarterbacks. Another really cool show I want to talk about on Netflix is called it's a comedy, I guess. It's not a show in that I don't know how to explain it, but It's a show. It's called Cunk on Earth, Cunk, Cunk on Earth. Which you're like, what is that? Well, it's kind of a comedy. It's parodying the History Channel in a way, and it's this British actress, and I'm not sure what her real name is, but she plays this character, and her last name is Kunk, and that's why it's called Kunk on Earth. I forget what her first name is in the show, but her last name is Kunk, anyways. And she's kind of this incompetent history person who is hosting this like history on the Earth. And so each episode they talk about different history stuff that deals with history of world history, basically. And this was actually a show that was on BBC, I think. It's a British show, but the British show, I think, is like Cunk on Great Britain or something like that, where she goes over history of Great Britain or something like that. So this was like a BBC show thing that she was doing, and then Netflix picked her up, and she was doing it. She did this one season on Netflix, kind of the same style, but on world history instead of just British history. And yeah, the whole idea is that she's this really stupid, incompetent um, host who kind of is hosting this history channel type of show, and the writing is absolutely hilarious. And she it just, if you watch, like, I like watching history stuff, so it does parody history shows very well, with walking and talking in the camera and about stuff. And there's lots of her walking along like a coastline or ruins of something, or in the forest, and it does resemble what they do in real life. And but the writing is so funny. Like, the stuff she says is just it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just hilarious. Like, in the way she like tries to, because she's stupid, and so she's talking about the stuff that she doesn't really understand, and she's trying to make analogies, and she makes like a really stupid analogy or compares it to something and more current that is a bad comparison, anyways. And probably the funniest thing about those is that she sits down with experts, with historical experts, and ask them questions, and they have to answer as best they can. And the joke is, of course, she's asking stupid questions and really out the wall type questions, but she's saying it very seriously. Like, she's very serious about it, but it's obviously just a crazy question. And the experts, they don't have a script. They have no idea what she's going to say to them. So their job is, and they know that she's playing a character, so they know she's going to ask stupid questions. So, but their job is, they don't know what she's going to ask, but whatever stupid question she asks, they have to pretend like it's a serious question, and they have to try to answer the question the best they can. And it's just hilarious because you just can tell from the experts, they're just like, she says something stupid, and they just kind of look at her like, well, and they're trying their best to answer it through, someone who's really smart and has like PhD probably, and whatever, it could be about, medieval history, or it could be about, the whatever, and it could be about like art in Italy or something like that, and she would say something stupid, and like, well, and they try to correct her on what she's saying, and then she has funny responses. So, but yeah, it's a very funny show. Yeah, sounds interesting. Yeah, if you like that kind of thing, man, it's hilarious. It's just yeah, it's just a really funny show that kind of like it parodying like a real reality show or whatever. But yeah, check that out. Cunk on Earth. I recommend. Um, Other show I think I have on here that I want to talk about is, it's not a new show. It's actually a show that's been on for a while, and I finally got around to watching it. And it's called The Orville, which is created by Seth MacFarlane, who, of course, is famous for The Family Guy and The Cleveland Show, and what's it? There's another show that he does. He has like three different cartoon animation shows. The big one being Family Guy, of course, which I'm a big Family Guy fan. I've been watching that since the beginning. I was like in high school when it came out, when the first season came out. We had no idea who Seth MacFarlane was. But anyways, Orville is basically a Star Trek show that Seth MacFarlane stars in. He stars in as a captain, and he kind of created the show and everything. American Dad, that's it, yeah. American Dad. That's like his other show that he does, anyways. Um, but yeah, the Orville. There's only 3 seasons, and they're on Disney Plus now. I forget where it started, but I think it just recently, this maybe years more ago, it came onto Disney Plus. And I'm a big Star Trek fan as well, or I should say, I'm a big Star Trek Next Generation fan. Like, I love that show. That's one of my favorite shows of all time. I used to watch that as a kid. Um, and so this show really kind of resembles, to me, it really resembles Star Trek Next Generation. If you like Star Trek Next Generation, I think you really like the show, because I I loved the show. I thought this was one of the best shows I've ever seen. Um, and it's interesting because I remember when it first was advertised, and I don't know how many years ago it first came out. Uh, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. Orville was being, talked about. It was coming, and there were commercials like that. It looked like it was going to be like, I guess I thought, because Seth MacFarlane was like the star and he was creating it, it was going to be like a Star Trek parody show. I thought it was going to be, oh, it's going to take place kind of in a Star Trek type place, but it's going to be a comedy, and it's not going to be so serious like, Star Trek Next Generation or whatever can be serious or comedic. Sometimes they have some comedy, some episodes that are more comedic, and some that are more serious. But I thought this was going to be just really silly. I mean, if you know Seth MacFarlane, the shows are really silly. So I thought, oh, this is going to be like a really silly parody Star Trek, which I was all on board for. I was like, okay, I'm on board for like a parody Star Trek show, starring Seth MacFarlane. So I remember the first season come out. I don't know if I watched all the first season. I watched most of the first season when it came out. I might have watched it all, in fact, and thought it was a decent show. I thought, oh, this is pretty decent. What was interesting is it started off being more comedic, I thought, but then as the show went on, it got more serious, and it was like dealing with serious subject matters, in fact, and it was like kind of a surprise to me. I was like, wow, this actually just reminds me of Star Trek, where it's dealing with serious issues and themes and different really interesting situations that the crew has to go through, and moral. It deals with morals and ethics and stuff like that in a very interesting way. And yeah, I thought, wow, this was like actually an original show and not really a parody at all. And it deals with a lot of serious subject matters anyway. So I hadn't really gone back to it. And so recently, since it's on Disney Plus, I thought, oh, I'll watch all 3 seasons. And so I did, and I finally finished it recently, the third season. And like I said, it is a great show. It's one of the best written shows I've ever seen. It's up there to me with Star Trek Next Generation as far as sci-fi writing. I mean, they do amazing job. Um, and it's really, what I love is like they really built their own world or universe with different species, and because like I said, there's no Klingons or Vulcans or anything like that. They made up their own alien species that are similar to those, but original in the same way. It's very original how they did it, yet very unique at the same time. So I was like, wow, they're taking ideas from Star Trek, but making this whole original idea out of it, and it really works. And the casting is great. I thought Seth MacFarlane really good as the lead. I was like, and even the serious moments he does, I'm like, man, he can act. He's actually a good actor. Like, I had no idea. I knew he's funny, but I was like, wow, he's really good at the lead. Like, I know he could be a good leading man, but I was like, man, this guy is really talented. And the writing was excellent, just so good. And it deals with different, there's a species that's kind of like the Klingons in there, that they're more warlike, and they're kind of almost like the enemies that they don't get along with and they have to be careful of. And really good how they set up that whole culture like they did with the Klingons, and how they interact, and how they're trying to find peace with them, and how that all works. And there's another species, this robots, android species, kind of the Kalons, who become like really the major villains. And they kind of remind you almost of like the Borg or something. Not quite like that, but somewhat similar, where they're more mechanical and logical and stuff. And they become actually a pretty cool villain. And then they find peace with them, or they're trying to, and they're really good, like how they did it. And there's one character, and they did stuff in the first season that you're like, oh, okay, this is like a one-time thing. And then they bring back the same people or same situation in the second and third seasons, and you see a really cool character arc with some characters that you're like, wow, I was not expecting like this storyline to continue into the third season until he finally find like a really cool conclusion to the whole story that I really enjoyed. So they're not even just like Star Trek was more like episodic, like, okay, we're going to have this happen in this episode. Next episode, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to have a different thing. In this show, it's only 3 seasons, I said, but stuff that happens really continues on throughout the show. Like there's definitely some arcs and themes that continue on to the third season, which I really enjoyed. That wasn't just episodic, that it really had, you really had to watch every episode to get that flow of the show. And it ends on such a great conclusion. Like this last 2 episodes, oh, were so good. Such a good conclusion to the story. Like, I don't know if they're going to do any more season, which kind of sucks. I wish there's more. I want more Orville. After the third season, I was like, wow, I thought third season was the best season. So I was like, I would love more seasons, but I don't know if it's been being watched or if it's gotten not enough viewers. From what I've seen, I haven't seen any talk about any more seasons. And if not, it ended on a good way, though. I thought they ended on a good finale overall. And yeah, there's some storylines that I just not expect that happen. Like, I think the second to last episode of third season, one of the best episodes of any show I've seen. I mean, the way they conclude this big storyline throughout the show, and they find a really cool, emotionally satisfactory conclusion to it is just amazing. Anyways, yeah, I talk a lot about this, but yeah, I'm just pleasantly surprised at how much I liked Orville. The third season was interesting because every episode was over an hour long. So they were long episodes, but they were excellent anyways. So I recommend, if you haven't seen the Orville, you have Disney Plus, check out the Orville, especially if you like sci-fi. It is a great sci-fi show. And here, Slim Shad's asking about Ahsoka. Yes, I have been watching Ahsoka. I wasn't planning on talking about it just because there's one more episode left for the season. So I was gonna wait to talk about Ahsoka until the show's over. I'm a little mixed on it right now. Like, at first I was kind of like, okay, I kind of like the action. I like that Uyghur lightsaber fights, which I really love lightsaber fights in Star Wars. So I kind of want more lightsaber fights. I want more Jedi action, all that. So I was like happy that we got Ahsoka. I was like, okay, now we're gonna get some more Jedi stuff. Which Mandalorian's fine. I like the Mandalorian stuff, but I really love the idea of getting back to the Jedis and stuff like that, or what's left of the Jedis and Siths and stuff. So there's some stuff I like there. Yeah, and I'll give more of my thoughts maybe sometime. Like I'm kind of in the middle right now of the show. Like first I was like really like, okay, I'm enjoying this. Last couple episodes I was kind of like, okay, there's some really stupid stuff happening here that's kind of bothering me. Um, uh, yeah, there's just some stupid decisions made and some of the characters and some bad writing, I think, in there. But so we'll see how it ends in the next episode, I guess, and see if they end on a good way. But okay, so you're loving it. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm wondering how other people think about it. Yeah, I did watch Clone Wars and Rebels. I really like Clone Wars. I thought Clone Wars was a really good animated show. Some interesting ideas there. Rebels, I was okay. I wasn't as crazy about Rebels. I'm not as crazy about the whole storyline with what's his name, Ezra and Kane or whatever. I don't know. I wasn't quite into the characters, but it was okay. I definitely liked when Darth Maul showed up and Obi-Wan, and some of those in Ahsoka too. And there's some good stuff like Ahsoka and Darth Vader had some good stuff in Rebels, I believe. And yeah, there's some good stuff definitely in Rebels. And the problem is, I'll be honest, I don't remember everything that happened. So I know Ahsoka is really like a sequel to the Rebels. So sometimes stuff happens in Ahsoka and I don't remember. And I'll have to watch somebody else talk about it and they'll talk about, oh, this happened on Rebels. And I go, oh yeah, I forgot that was a thing on Rebels and all that. I mean, I knew the characters and stuff like that and kind of what was going on there. But yeah, anyways, but yeah, that's what I think. Overall, I like the Bad Batch. The first season I liked okay. Second season I was kind of bored with, so I'm kind of off and on the animation shows. I definitely think Clone Wars was the best thing they've done. And I'll say this: I think Ahsoka is better than Obi-Wan and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and better than Andor, which I thought were really bad shows. I would still say Mandalorian is the best show that Star Wars has done so far. Even the third season wasn't great with the Mandalore. It was okay. First two seasons were great though for the Mandalore. Like I was a big fan of the first two seasons. Third season it wasn't as good, but still some good stuff there. Ahsoka, like I said, it's kind of in the middle right now for me. Some good stuff there, some bad stuff. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna hate on it so much as some do, but I'm not gonna love it as much as some others. I know Jacob Martins. I think he likes the show quite a bit. I have a feeling he's probably liking it more than me. Adam from What the Gym. I don't know if he's watching it, but he's a big Star Wars guy. So, and then there's this guy named Anthony Perez who loves Star Wars. I know he'll probably say this is like the best show ever. I know he loves it probably a lot more than I do, but yeah, getting back to my sister here, talking about I think Orville. So yeah, my favorite is when they watched Seinfeld and they had to explain to the Keelan guy what pranks were. So he did a prank and cut off a guy's leg. Yeah, that happened the first season. Yeah, because he's kind of it's kind of like Spock in a way that he doesn't understand how humans think and so like that. He can only think like logically, whatever, and he doesn't understand pranks. Yeah, so he tries to do a prank, yeah, and he cuts a guy's leg off. That was pretty funny. But there are some funny moments, but it's not all comedy on that show, which I kind of enjoyed. Let's see. Some shady. Agreed. I love Clone Wars. Not so big on Rebels, so you're like me. So it does feel like Rebels season 5. It does, yeah, definitely a lot like Rebels. Yeah, they really kind of continue on that series with Ahsoka. Way better than Obi-Wan. Okay, good. I was very disappointed because I was so hyped for it. Me too. Yeah, I was the same way. Like I was so disappointed with Obi-Wan. I thought it didn't have as much lightsaber action as I wanted, and I didn't like Obi-Wan and Darth Vader meeting. I don't know. It just there's some stuff like that, and the story just seemed very repetitive. There wasn't enough plot in that whole show, and uh, episode 5 Ahsoka has carried the whole series for me so far. The episodes have been okay, but okay. So you're okay. So we're not too far from each other on this. Is 5 the one where she sees Anakin? And I like when she's in the world between worlds or something like that, and they go back to. I love that they showed a young live action Ahsoka, which I thought was kind of cool because we've seen a lot of Ahsoka in the animation shows. But that was cool to see her as a live character, and they had a different actress player, and go back in her and Anakin talking uh, during the Clone Wars. Like that was really cool. Like I enjoyed that. All right. So I think that's all the TV shows I was going to talk about. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Just talk about a couple minor things I think before I get to the big movies. Yeah. Yeah. You agree with me on that? um, uh, like recently, I watched a documentary on Netflix called. I think it was like it's a there's a Netflix has like a sports documentary show that has talks about different subjects in sports, anyways, and I'm forgetting what it's called now. Uh, but the one I saw recently was on I can't remember his name. But I think it was called Johnny Football. I think was the name of the documentary, if I remember right. I watched it on Netflix just a couple days ago. I think even or maybe it's just this last week. Uh, and you have to maybe Slim Shady. Maybe you can remind me what's his name? John. His name was John something. Anyways, and he was interesting subject matter because I don't know what it was back in the I don't know it was 10 years or more. He was this hot shot quarterback for Texas A&M, and he came in his freshman season and had just the best freshman season quarterback that you've ever seen, and wins the Heisman Trophy his freshman year, which no one's ever done that. I don't know if anybody's done that since, but like no, freshmen never win the Heisman. That's just crazy. Um, oh, and you're a Cleveland Browns fan? Oh, that's right. So you know all about it then, probably. Uh, Yeah, Johnny Football. That's not his real name, but he was so good at football, I guess they just call him Johnny Football. And I remember that. That was like his nickname. Um, and anyway, so and you get an interview with him, Manziel. That's it. Yeah, my sister remembers. Yeah, Johnny Manziel is his name, anyways. And he's from Texas, and they kind of talk about him. They even show him in high school, him being like a stud quarterback in high school. And I don't. It doesn't seem like he's that tall or that. He doesn't look that impressive looking at him, but he actually was a good runner too. Like they showed a lot of plays where he's just running past people and very athletic and obviously pretty good arm. And he was good on the run and throwing. And yeah, had just an incredible freshman season. They beat Alabama, which Alabama nobody beat Alabama, and Texas A&M beat Alabama. So that was like shocking at the time. And that's why he won the Heisman, because he led the team to beat Alabama that year. Um, but if you know about Manziel at all, or if you're ever familiar with that era, he was again. So he was like the hot shot. He was the thing everybody talked about. Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football, and you just thought, oh, this guy's going to be a star quarterback in the NFL. Like once he gets in the NFL, I mean, this guy's just going to take over. I mean, he's so good. And also, you thought, oh, surely he's going to win like a championship with Texas A&M. I mean, he's making them into a championship team. I don't think they were anything really until he took over. Maybe I'm not sure, but anyways. But what you do know about Johnny Manziel, he's also um, he never lived up to the hype because he he had a lot of issues, personal issues. One was that he partied all the time when he, especially in college, and they talk a lot. And they interview his friends and family members and his coaches and people he played with, and they talked about he was constantly uh, drinking, doing drugs, partying like crazy. And there's all these pictures of him partying with people. He was just a party guy. He just was just out there to have fun. And he even went like there's a game where they talk about he was he had like a hangover, like because he got drunk the night before, and so he had this huge hangover. And and one of the players would look at him like, oh man, like you don't look too good, like are you gonna be okay, and he ended up having a good game. He ended up having a great game even when he was on a hangover. It's one of those things where the guy was just, I don't know, he's just, of course you're young, and so when you're young you're able to maybe bounce back after a hangover more than when you get older. But anyways, so there's a lot of crazy stories like that. And he was dealt with a lot of scandals after his freshman season. Like he wanted to, sell his, stuff with his name on it and make money. And of course, the NCAA said you can't do that. Today it's changed where you can make money off your name, but at the time it was a big thing about, the NCAA had a big rule about you're not supposed to be making money while you're in college, basically as an athlete. But his friend there, I forget, they talk about like he had a friend who kind of took over as manager, kind of, or whatever, and was selling stuff, I think, with his name on it, like unofficially. And Benzel was making like tons of money, and he was like going to basketball games and stuff, and he went to Super Bowl. Like he was like in the front row of the Super Bowl, which cost thousands of dollars. So I mean, and so you go, how does a college kid have that much money to go to the Super Bowl? And so he's obviously was getting paid a bunch of money under the table kind of stuff, or selling stuff against the rules anyways. And then he got caught, and then I think he lied about it, and somehow he got suspended the next second season, his sophomore season. He got suspended and he missed a bunch of games, but then he came back. But then Texas A&M didn't have that good of a year, I think. So it was somewhat disappointing, but it felt like the guy just would not concentrate on just football. He was just concentrating on, and he was a celebrity. He was hanging out with LeBron James and all these other celebrities, which I'm like, he's only 20 years old or something like that. I'm thinking, what's LeBron doing hanging out with a 20-year-old? I mean, and were they drinking together? I mean, LeBron James, a terrible person, and all these other celebrities, were they drinking with this guy? Like that's Andre. I don't know, a lot of issues there, but yeah. So he was just doing too much, and yeah, it was just a terrible thing. Like he definitely uh, he had this great gift, great opportunity, and he totally screwed it. He totally what's the word? Didn't take that opportunity that he had. Totally screwed it away, or whatever the word is. Uh, just a lot of issues there. But yeah, he played the second year, and then he decided he just wanted to go to NFL, of course, and he knew and he ended up being a pretty high pick, I think. And it's shady. Yeah, he went to Cleveland Browns, um, drafted him. See, they put him in a positive light too much for me. They skipped a lot of scandals that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I said he'd probably know more if he paid attention in Cleveland. Um, People from Cleveland would see him partying all night Saturday and then play on Sunday. He couldn't pull off that lifestyle in the NFL. Yeah, so he gets drafted fairly high, I think, to the Cleveland Browns, who were looking for a quarterback. And Cleveland, I know Slim Shady, if he, I guess, around this time, of course, Cleveland Browns fans were like, "Oh, here's the savior to come, bring our team to, we're going to have, a bright future because we're going to have this amazing quarterback, Johnny Manziel, from, one of the best quarterbacks we ever seen out of college." And so they were expecting this guy to come out and be, Patrick Mahomes or whatever at the time, before Patrick Mahomes. And okay, so he's 22nd. So I don't know much about NFL drafting. I mean, there's a lot of rounds and stuff like that. So it's not super high, maybe, but first round, anyways. But yeah, so he comes to Cleveland, and like Slim Shanies said in the chat, he was like still partying, still doing drugs, and yeah, he was not playing. I mean, I don't think he even started. I don't know if he even started a game. I feel like he was like a backup quarterback for Cleveland, and yeah, everybody's so excited, and then he comes in and he's just the backup, and it's like, wait a minute, this guy's supposed to like be our star guy, help us win. And because I remember when he got drafted, and I thought, oh yeah, this guy's gonna be a star, and then he just disappeared. And I never really knew what happened to him. I just knew like, he just never made it for some reason. And yeah, they talk about he had a lot of issues. He got I think that he said he was like bipolar or something like that. So I don't know if it makes me wonder. And it seems like he just couldn't handle the pressure of NFL or the celebrity status of the NFL. He just wanted to party and have fun. He didn't really care about working hard and becoming a better football player. In fact, and that's what he kind of says in the documentary. It was just like he really didn't care about football anymore. And it's crazy because this guy's so talented. He was like, yeah, it's like football wasn't really that fun anymore. He just like partying and going out clubbing and whatever and spending money. And like because he wouldn't spend any time on the playbook because the coaches even say like they have an iPad or something like that, and you get an iPad and you study plays and stuff like that. And you study anyways, and the iPad clocks in how much time you're spending watching and studying plays and stuff like that. Anyway, so they kind of I guess keep tabs on how much people are looking at the plays and studying the footage and whatever. Anyways, and they said John Manziel was zero. He didn't spend 1 second studying the playbook, studying, what do you call it, play footage, whatever, of other teams. Like he spent no time working at getting better and working hard at, learning everything. He just didn't care. It's like he just all of a sudden just didn't care anymore. And he didn't last very long, I think, with Cleveland. And I don't know if he was cut, I forget, or he quit. But yeah, it was gone. And it was like, that was it. That was all of Johnny Manziel and Johnny Football. Anyways, and so I think he just it felt like to me like he just mentally couldn't do it. And so I guess if that's the case, like, well, that's too bad. I mean, again, though, it's hard not to be critical of somebody who had it all and just, spent their time partying and drinking and doing drugs, and instead of working hard, I mean, you contrast that with someone like Patrick Mahomes, who, doesn't have any scandals. He's not known for partying or anything. He has a family, and he works really hard being a better football player, and he just wants to win, and he loves playing. And so it's just a contrast there of, anyways, just a wasted opportunity, I guess is what I'd say but yeah, overall interesting documentary if you're interested in sports or football. See, I was the most excited over a draft pick ever. Yeah. I still think he could have been really good if he didn't have his issues. Like I said, yeah, he had the talent. If he would have just worked hard, like I said, spend his time studying, doing whatever he could to get better. I mean, who knows? He could have been good, but there's a mental aspect there that you don't realize that happens to some players, I guess, and he just couldn't handle it mentally, I think. He was a week one starter his second year, but kept getting in trouble, so the team would suspend him. Yeah, he just was not making good choices, I guess you can say. Cut after 2 years. Yeah, that's what I thought. He got cut when he missed a game because he was partying in Vegas and missed the. That's right. Yeah, he missed a flight. That's right. Yeah, he missed a flight and missed a game, which you can't let that happen. I mean, NFL. I mean, you're out there to help the team win. That's your job, and if you're not doing it, then it's like, why do we need you? Yeah, that's horrible. Yeah, that's what he did. He actually got cut after 2 years after being the Heisman Trophy winner his freshman year, and yeah, it's just a bust, And maybe that's mean to say. I mean, he was a bust. I mean, he feels like he's matured in the documentary. He's being very honest about what happened to him in his past, and so it feels like maybe I feel like he had some regrets maybe in there, and that he just felt like he wasn't ready and he was too immature, and so I don't know what he does now. He probably has, I guess, maybe made enough money off of the one contract or whatever, and maybe he's able to sell stuff and make money. I don't know what he does to make money, but anyways, so kind of interesting, tragic, kind of not tragic maybe, but sad kind of story, but very interesting. I'm glad you're on here, Slim Shady, because that's great that you have a lot of cool information about that I don't even know. Okay. Well, I guess I kind of watched two horror movies recently, which I'm not a horror movie fan, so this will be a surprise to anybody that knows me. I don't watch horror movies, but I kind of watched two of them recently because people were recommending them, so I was like, I'll take a chance at them. One was Saw, believe it or not, and of course everybody's talking about Saw X or Saw 10. There's a 10th movie coming out. Just came out, I think, this weekend. Everybody's doing reviews on it right now, but yeah, like I said, Saw is not a series I ever wanted to get into. I remember when the first Saw came out and the trailer looked horrible. Like, yeah, it looked like about this guy who tortures people to death, and I was like, I don't want to watch anything where people get tortured to death. Like, that sounds horrible. So Saw was always a series like I was like I was never gonna watch or get into the Saw movies, but it's funny. I kept talking to people that are like, you should watch Saw. It's not as bad as you think, and as far as like the gore factor, like I don't watch horror movies I don't like seeing really bloody, gory deaths or people getting killed in horrible ways or stuff like that. Like, yeah, I don't want to see that. It's just I don't like to be grossed out or disturbed mentally. Like, that's not enjoyable to me. And part of it's maybe morally. Like, morally, I just don't like seeing that stuff. It's not really a thing it's not a thing I feel like people should watch. It messes with your brain and, in bad ways, I'm afraid, and I don't want my brain to be messed with, I guess, if that makes sense. And so kind of for moral reasons, I just don't watch them because they're not moral shows, of course. And there's a lot of other shows that aren't moral as well. But in that way, I just don't like what horror movies do. I don't mind being scared, though. Like, I like a good thriller, and I don't mind it being like thrilling and there's maybe some jump scares and there's some scary monsters or something like that, as long as there's not like I don't want to see people getting chopped in half or something, or getting their heads torn off, or getting eaten alive. I don't want to watch that kind of stuff, if that makes sense. um Anyways, but people said Saw isn't that gory and that's more of a thriller. And I don't know, I just had so many people go, oh, you should watch Saw, try that out. And so finally I was like, okay, I'll try it out. If they say it's not as bad. So I thought it was more of the torture porn kind of. All of a sudden these movies came out and they call them torture porn, which was like Saw and what's it called? There's another series that's really terrible that I've heard of. But there's been a lot of these shows that come out where it's like they just really up the gore factor to a point where it's like, wow, I don't want to see it. Anyways, but so yeah, so I checked out Saw anyways. And overall, I did not like it. And it wasn't because it was like too gory necessarily, or the horror was too bad. I just thought it was boring. Like I was really, and this is surprising because everybody's like, "Oh, it's a cool thriller," and I was like, I was not thrilled at all. And I mean, it's a bit of a mystery, but I already knew the ending because it's been out. It came out in like 2004, and I've watched a lot of stuff that spoiled the show because I never thought I'd watch it, so I didn't mind being spoiled. So unfortunately, I've been spoiled about the ending of this movie. So the ending is supposed to be very surprising, but it didn't surprise me because I knew what was going to happen. That ruined the movie probably. But either way, I was watching it, and the movie is these two guys are in this kind of dirty bathroom kind of setting, and they're chained to a pipe that they can't get through, and they don't know why they're there, kind of how they got there. And there's this jigsaw serial killer who wants him to. He wants one guy to kill the other guy, I think, or he does, and but he has to keep that kind of secret. He doesn't want him to know, and they're trying to work together to try to get free. But at the same time, I don't know. And it's just half of the movie is just these two guys in a room trying to figure out how to get free of their handcuffs. Anyways, and then there's flashbacks. You see a bunch of flashbacks of one of the actors, Carrie Ells, who plays a doctor. That's one of the guys chained up. Anyways, and you see kind of flashback of his life and what he's been going through, and kind of his connection to the Jigsaw. I guess they're trying to figure out what their connection is, the Jigsaw killer, I think. And so you see some of the story through his back. And there's some mystery stuff. There's some twists. There's some happen. Dan Glover plays like I don't know if it's a police detective that's trying to find the Jigsaw killer, and they find other people that were killed by a Jigsaw killer in horrible ways. And he's an interesting serial killer who puts you in a trap, and so you can survive if you can figure out how to get past the trap. But usually, it's going to take something out of you. It's going to torture you. It's going to cut something off. But it's like it's possible to survive, but it's not pretty anyways. But it gives you a chance to survive by putting you in these traps anyways. So it's an interesting idea in that sense. Like that's an interesting over the top, serial killer type idea. So I can see that as being kind of original ideas. So, but I was just bored. I don't know. It was just a boring movie to me. And I guess, and I said this in my Letterboxd review, is just like I didn't get who the Jigsaw killer was. What was his motivation? And maybe they don't need motivation, but I guess to me, I was just the whole time thinking like, why did he capture these two people? I never got that idea. I thought that was going to be a thing that was going to really tie everything together. Like, why is he going after these two individuals? What is their connection? Why does he want to kill them? Why does he want him to kill him? I don't know. It was like, I don't get why I feel like the serial killer should have some kind of motivation, some kind of purpose. I don't know. I just didn't get why he did this to these two people. And then the ending just kind of ends, and you're just like, I remember it ended. I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm like, okay, like what was the purpose of all that? What was the point of that? I wasn't scared or thrilled or anything. It was just boring and just pointless, I guess, to me anyway. So, yeah, I didn't care for it. And people say I should watch the first three because I guess the second, third one maybe will give me more information to connect. Maybe I don't know. I'm just not interested in the Saw movies, to be honest, or to continue on the series. Some shit. I don't like how he was still drinking in the documentary. He acts like he's living a sober life. Yeah, he did. He kind of acted like he was more sober. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's Samuel Johnny. Yeah, that could be. I just don't know. He's kind of become obscure right now. Just a blimp in history of sports. Yeah, never seen Saw, I'm guessing. You like the first Saw? I have zero interest in Saw X. Yeah. I don't know if I'd watch any more. People say I should watch the second and third one. I don't know. But yeah, and again, I'm not a horror guy, so it didn't do anything for me. The other one I saw was Psycho 2, actually. I'm a big fan of Psycho. It's one of the best thrillers. It's my favorite Hitchcock movie. One of my favorite movies out of the 60s, in fact. Came out in 1960, the first one, of course, with Anthony Perkins, of course, with a great performance, just amazing performance as, what's his name? Now I'm forgetting names, but as the main, spoiler alert, as the kind of the serial killer in the movie, the psycho in the movie, Norman Bates. Yeah, Anthony Perkins plays Norman Bates. Anyways, so Psycho 2, which I never really knew much about the sequels. I don't know if I didn't think he needed a sequel, but a friend of mine named Nornrad89 is his channel. He said on his channel that he likes Psycho 2 better than the first Psycho. And that made me go, what? Like, Psycho is such a classic. Like, I can't imagine the sequel being better. But I was like, well, I'll check it out to see if it's as good as Norn said it was, you know. And so I watched it just for fun. It was like one of those things like, sometimes you watch something for, it's not probably going to be the best thing, but you're just like, just something to watch and say you did it, you know. So yeah, so I watched it. And it's interesting because it came out in the 80s anyway. So it's like, I think 82, 83 or something like that. So it was like 22 or 23 years after the first movie. And the whole movie is Norman Bates has been in an insane asylum for 22 years. And the court is letting him free. Like he's on parole or something. I don't know what you want to call it. But they're freeing him to go back to normal life. And so now Anthony Perkins is playing Norman Bates again. And of course, now he's older. He's an older guy. And he goes back to his house that, is his hotel. And it's like, it's being kind of ran by somebody, but no one's living in the house. So it's been abandoned for 22 years, something like that. And so he's going back to that house anyways, which seems like a bad idea. And he's trying to have a normal life. It seems like he's rehabilitated in a way, and that he gets a job at the diner as like a cook, and he's trying to fix up the house, and he becomes friends with a girl at work and helping her out. And of course, people are getting murdered. So you're like, what's happening? Is he murdering people? If he's not, then who is? And also, he's hearing his mother talk to him. Of course, he's in his mother's house, and of course, where he murdered his mom in the past or whatever. And so he's hearing voices again, and so you're kind of, it's like he doesn't seem evil, but yet he definitely still has that craziness inside of him. These voices are talking to him. His mom is, and so you're kind of pulling for him, like, oh, don't be a killer, but at the same time, it's Psycho 2. It's about people getting murdered. That's why. Anyways, but yeah, and it follows, and it has somewhat of a twist at the end, and you find out who's the murderer. And anyways, overall, I did not enjoy this movie. And some big problems I have with it. First is just the fact that they would let him. He murdered so many people. I mean, so many people. I don't know how many people he murdered, but I mean, we see him murder 2 people in the first movie, and I think there's been other people he murdered before that. We know he murdered his mom and like his father-in-law, whatever, her boyfriend maybe. So we know he murdered like at least 4 people up to that point, and probably more. But he's a serial killer, and the whole idea was that, well, he pleaded insanity, so he didn't go to jail. He went to an insane asylum. So and I guess after 22 years, the psych doctors decided that he was rehabilitated and that he was no longer crazy or hearing voices or whatever, and that he was normal, and so he was safe to go back to society. And it's like, no, you would never let a serial killer back into society, no matter what. It doesn't matter if they're seem rehabilitated. It doesn't matter if they seem like they're more normal. You can't trust a serial killer. You never can trust them. And no, not a million years would you let a serial killer back into society. That's just the stupidest idea I've ever heard in my life. I mean, it's like letting the BTK killer back to Wichita. It's like, oh, BTK guy, he murdered 10 people in the 70s, but he's been in jail. Of course, he's not insane asylum. He's in jail, so it's different. But we wouldn't let it happen. It's like, no, you cannot let a BTK out, back to live back in Wichita and get a job in town. We'd be like, no, he killed a bunch of people in the 70s. It was a horrible thing. Anyways, I'm just making an analogy there, but if that was a real thing, like, yeah, you'd be outraged. Like, no way, Norman Bates is coming back. That murderer. Yeah, you would be like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm leaving, going somewhere else. I'm not going to be in this town with the murderer running loose. Anyways, that's just a stupid idea. Anyways, but you go, okay, I'm gonna have to just take it. But anyways, and throughout the movie, it's not actually the first half of the movie wasn't terrible. It was like there's some mystery, like, okay, who's murdering people? Is he's hearing voices? People are leaving messages. Is it really happening? Is it all in his head? There's some interesting ideas there, I think, and he's kind of, he has this young, pretty girl staying at his house that doesn't have a place to stay, and obviously some creepy things are going on there. Because this is a rated R movie, you can get more like nudity in it, and the kills are a little more violent. And it wasn't too violent. There was this one kill where someone stabs somebody through the mouth, and it goes through the back of their head like a big knife. That was definitely the most gruesome kill. Which was like, okay, that was kind of a cool kill, I guess. Don't know if that can happen in real life, but that's interesting. I don't think it could happen, but in real life, but okay. Um, but yeah, so you see somebody's murdering, and then there's some storylines that happen that kind of somewhat surprising. We're like, oh, okay, I didn't know this was going to happen. Anyways, but then at the end, he, I'm not gonna spoil it, I guess, but the twist I thought was really stupid. And it kind of ruins the first movie in a sense when they're like reveal like who the murderer is, who's really murdering everybody, and their connection with Norman Bates, and I was like, oh, really? Like that was a 22 years, and that's the idea we got of making a sequel. I don't know. I thought it was a dumb idea, the twist, and it happens like 5 minutes before the movie's over, or maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It's like there's only maybe 5 minutes left in the movie, and all of a sudden we get the twist of like, and you're just like, really? That's what's going on, and it's kind of interesting. I think the last shot was actually really good. There's a shot of Norman Bates standing like on the bottom of that hill with the house in the background, and Norman Bates or I should say Anthony Perkins, does have this creepy look about him. Because he's tall and skinny and langly, and so the footage of him like standing on top of the hill with the hat, I don't know, it definitely has a really cool creepy look to it. That I thought that was a good last shot of the movie. But yeah, overall, of course, what do you expect? It's a sequel from a movie from 1960. I mean, it's gonna be hard to make a good movie out of that. So I'm sorry, Norn, I wasn't a fan. I know you like it a lot, but there's a Psycho 3. I thought about maybe watching at some point to see what happens in the next Psycho movie. Anyways, but yeah, so that's Psycho 2. I'm going to talk about two movies that came out recently that aren't that well known. They're very small movies. One is called Theater Camp, and if you never heard of it, yeah, I never heard of it either until recently. It's not a movie that's I don't know if it came out in movie theaters maybe, or it's just a really small indie movie kind of thing, I think. Uh, and I only know about it because somebody I was on Z Talks this a week or two ago, and in the chat was a guy named Josh, and Josh was raving about this movie called Theater Camp, and saying it was like one of the funniest movies he's ever seen, or something like that. It was like one of the great comedies of the year, and like he gave like 4.5 stars, like, and even his Letterboxd review, yeah, he gave a really good review for this thing called Theater Camp, and I was like, huh, Theater Camp, never heard of it, but here's this guy I know that knows a lot about movies, and me and Josh, our movie likes are different. Like we have the different tastes in movies, so it's always hard, when you, and nothing against Josh, that's just the way it is. Josh likes more these slow moving independent movies, I would say indie movies, and I like more probably fast paced blockbuster action movies, and stuff like that. So we just kind of just different tastes in movies in a sense. Anyways, but he was talking about Theater Camp, so it perked my interest enough that I was like, okay, I'll see if I can find this and watch it, because if it's a great comedy, I love a good comedy, especially kind of a hidden gem comedy that no one's heard of. Anyway, so I watched it, and it's one of the worst movies I've seen this whole year. It's definitely going to be down as one of the worst movies I've seen. Um, it's this whole idea behind this movie is it's a children's theater camp, whatever, like in the summer, and they put on plays. They rehearse and put on plays, and there's these theater camp workers that are help them out. And uh, anyway, the director, there's only maybe a couple of famous people in this movie. And one is like the person who like runs the camp, and I'm forgetting the name of the actress now. Amy Sedaris, I think it is. She's like the head person who runs the camp, but she like goes into a coma at the very beginning. This is at the very beginning. She goes into a coma, and so the camp is not doing very well. So there's like, is the camp gonna get shut down? And all these kids love to go into this camp, I guess, and whatever. And there's these camp workers that work at the camp. Uh, so her son takes over, I guess, to oversee the summer camp, whatever, to keep it going. But her son's just this idiot. He's just a YouTube influencer guy, um, who knows nothing about running a camp. So the whole idea is like this incompetent guy is going to try to run this camp kind of thing and doesn't know what he's doing. That's kind of the whole idea behind it. And then you see the kids rehearsing, and you see the camp workers, and the only other famous person, now I forget his name, but he was in Dear Evan Hansen. Name was Ben something. Anyways, and he won like a Tony for Dear Evan Hansen. Anyways, I was kind of excited about the show just because it's like, oh, that guy's in it. Like he's a really good singer. So I'm like, oh, is this a musical? Like I was kind of hoping because it's about theater camp. So I thought, oh, maybe it's a musical. Maybe there's gonna be some musical numbers because I like musicals. But there's no singing in it, which is like, man, why do you have this guy in here who's he's a fine actor, but man, he's such a good singer. Like I wanted to hear him sing. But Ben Platt, yeah, that's it. Ben Platt, yeah, Ben Platt's in the movie, but he's like the only really person I know in the movie. Besides that, it's a lot of unknown people. But anyways, but yeah, the movie for me didn't laugh once. Not only did I not laugh, it was cringeworthy kind of humor at points that are trying to be funny, and I was like, oh wow, that was bad. That was not funny, and that's the worst kind of comedy, I guess. If you watch something, and go, wow, that was painfully unfunny, and that was me throughout the whole movie. I was just like, wow, this is pain. And again, that's just comedy is so subjective, you know. Some movies somebody can find very funny, and some others cannot think it's funny at all. And that's just one of these cases where Josh thought it was really funny. I didn't. I don't know. So you could find. And I've heard somebody else watch it and say they thought it was. I think Sin, lady I know, Sin from Sin's Corner. I think she said she thought it was okay, and she thought there was some funny stuff in there. So again, it's like that's just me, maybe, but just my opinion. I didn't find it funny. Like I didn't think any of it was funny, and didn't care for the characters at all. And I was just bored to tears. It was just terrible. And the guy who plays the son who takes over, that was one of the worst performances I've ever seen. Like he was just like this frat boy guy, and he was just the stuff he was doing was just so obnoxiously annoying. You're just like, wow, this is such an annoying character. I hate anytime this character was on. It was just badly portrayed. It was a bad character. Really brought the movie down every time he was on screen. Like I was just like, I don't like any of these characters. They're annoying, not funny. And those, I don't know, it just was not an interesting story. And I was just very, very disappointed because I had high hopes that it was going to be a good comedy. But in my opinion, it was terrible. I'm giving it a half star, in fact, and I've only given like maybe 2 or 3 movies half stars this year. That's the worst star rating you can give on Letterboxd. So it's one of the 2 or 3 worst movies I've seen this year that I've given half stars to. So it's definitely going to be in my worst list, unfortunately. Another movie that also was recommended to me, actually by Sin from Sin's Corner. She raved about this movie called A Million Miles Away. Um, and she's gave a great review. It was like thought it was like one of the best movies she's seen this year, and I never heard of it. Again, it's a movie I never heard of, didn't know it existed until somebody said, "Oh, it's a great movie. You should watch it." So I'm like, "Oh, okay." When someone comes out and just raves about a movie, I guess it piques my interest to go, well, I feel like if they like it, there's a chance I'll like it. And Million Miles Away is a true story about a guy, I can't remember his name, but he he came from Mexico. He was an immigrant from Mexico into America and lived, of course, they were farmers or whatever. I can't remember if they're in Texas or something, but they're a poor farming family, and I think he moved a lot from town to town, looking for places to farm, I think. And so, it's one of the stories of like this underdog who lives, in a poor family and stuff, and uh, probably won't amount to anything, but this guy, he, this is like I think he watched like the moon landing in the 1969 when he was a kid, or something like that. And he was, if I remember right, and yeah, I watched the movie and I can't remember everything, but um, he gets inspired. He wants to work with rockets or whatever, and he wants to be like an astronaut, whatever. And he's actually pretty good at math, and he works hard at school. And so it's, he's supposed to be one of these inspirational stories of a guy who comes out in a bad situation and works hard. And also he's Mexican, so there's a lot of racism, prejudice against him. So no one thought he had a chance. And anyways, I'm spoiling the movie, but this is based off a true story. But at the end, he does become an astronaut, and he goes out into space. And again, true story off a real person who, and they say he's the first like immigrant or first migrant worker to go out in space. And that was kind of the whole idea. It's like they took this real thing and made a whole story out of it. And I'm sure he probably wrote a book or something. They probably adapted it. Anyways, but yeah, so it's supposed to be this very uplifting. And the main actor, he's a fine actor. I'm forgetting his name now, but he was like, he's a Latino actor, Mexican actor that you see in almost everything that has Mexican actors in it. Like he was in Spider-Man. He was like, was it Spider-Man? No, not Spider-Man. Ant-Man. Sorry, he was in the Ant-Man movies. He was like Paul Rudd's best friend in those movies, and he's a guy that's been in a lot of stuff, but he's never like a major actor that's usually the lead actor in anything. It's like the first movie I saw where he was kind of the lead actor, and to me, it was a really really boring movie. And I'm sorry to say this because Sin really liked this movie, so I'm sorry, Sin, but I was bored to tears in this movie, and I never felt any emotion, and that's a problem because if it's supposed to be inspiring, uplifting movie, I should be feeling some like tears. I should be feeling some happy tears at the end, like feel really good about this story about this guy succeeding and all this. And I never felt it. Never felt any emotions at all throughout the movie. Even at the end, we finally became an astronaut. I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's like great, whatever. But I don't know. It just never really. I don't know what it was. I think it's the performances. Not that they're terrible, but they just weren't that great. And it's just a bland character. I should say this: the way they wrote the character was he was just a very boring, bland character. He wasn't interesting at all. And I don't know if that's an actor's fault if he just didn't do good enough job in the acting part, or it's just bad writing. They just didn't. They weren't able to really make you feel for the character. At least that's for me. I just the whole time I was just like, I just don't care about this guy. I mean, good for him. He's a nice guy and everything, and he's a family guy and gets married and has like 5 kids. And it's like, yeah, good for him. He got to go to space. Good. That's probably a good story. It'd probably be more interesting. I'd be more interested in reading like the story, like an autobiography of him, maybe. I'm sure that'd be more interesting than watching this because, yeah, just watching this, I just it was just very uninteresting, very boring. Never felt any emotional and uplifting parts. And even though there's some parts where I was like, okay, I know this is a emotional part in the movie. It's very inspirational. Like I can see like this should make me feel something. And if for some reason it didn't, I was like, I should be feeling something, but I'm not. So it's kind of disappointing in that way. But yeah, so I can't recommend it. But again, a friend of mine who's a good movie reviewer, Sin, loves the movie. Thought it was great. So again, it could be great. If you watch it, you might go, "Oh, it's a good movie." For some reason, for me, I just could not get into this movie. A million miles away. All right. Gosh, it's taking me so long just to get through all that. I don't know if I have time to get through all the other stuff I have on my list. We'll see. I should have gone through that faster, but so I'm getting to some of the bigger movies now that came out this last summer that I finally got around to. I guess I'll talk about Flash. It's on HBO Max, anyways. And I was not going to watch Flash because I hate Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller is a piece of garbage, human trash. What he's done, should be in jail. Should not be making movies. He should be in jail. Should be away from societies, and or needs to go. I mean, I'm sure he's going through some kind of rehab, but not only is he a weirdo guy, but if you read anything about him, I mean, he's assaulted women. He's what do you call it? he kidnapped a underage girl basically and took her somewhere, and so I just hate everything he does, and that's been the whole controversy of this movie. Of course, it's been one of the biggest, kind of hyped up movies that bombed. I mean, it bombed bad. It's one of the worst bombs of the year, which I'm so happy about because I did not want to watch this movie because I didn't want to support anything that Ezra Miller's a part of. Like, I don't want to support anything that he does, and I don't think he should be making movies ever, in my opinion. Or if he does, I don't think anybody should watch his movies. I don't think we should support him at all or anything he does. And hopefully they kick him off of the DC and he never shows up again in DC because he's going to ruin DC, in my opinion. But of course, all this stuff came out and he got arrested and he has all these scandals up. And just before this movie came out, and one of those things where I thought this movie's going to bomb. Why would they put this movie out? No one's going to watch a movie with this terrible human being. And all of my YouTube friends were like, "We're gonna go watch it." And I was like, "Man, why are you gonna watch a movie and support this horrible person?" Like, that was just my feelings. But it bombed, so so there was a lot of people like me that didn't watch it. So I kind of kept away from it, and I've heard all the bad reviews. And finally, it's enough time went by. I guess I was finally like, well, it's on HBO Max. I have HBO Max, so I was like, I guess I'll watch it just to see how bad it is, and just because it seemed like a big movie of the summer, in a sense that it was one that everybody talked about and was controversial, and so I was like, I'll watch it just because of that. Anyway, so I feel bad I watched it, but yeah, it was a terrible movie. It was a horrible movie, and I totally get why it bombed. It's so long. It was way too long. It was dragged on so much at the end, and Ezra Miller, I thought was such annoying. I mean, the character is such an annoying character, and if you've seen the trailers or seen the movie or anything about it, he goes in the past. He somehow figures out how to run so fast he can go back in time, which makes absolutely no sense. I'm not a scientist, but the science doesn't work to me. Like, how you can do that? How it's all kinds of stuff that just scientifically doesn't make sense to me. But he goes in the past, and then he meets his younger self, like not real young, but it's like, I don't know, college age stuff, whatever. And that is one of the most annoying. There's two of them, so there's two Ezra Millers, and the younger one, yeah, so such an annoying character. I hated every time he was on. Him talking to himself, it was terrible. Like, and I don't think Ezra Miller is a good enough actor to pull off this role and be a lead in a. It's the first time I think he's been a lead in a movie, and such a big blockbuster movie, and he couldn't do it. It's just, I thought he was terrible in the movie, Ezra Miller, in my opinion. And to see that throughout the whole movie, but yeah, so long, so boring. So, and the time travel stuff just didn't make sense, and it was stupid, I think. Then they go get Supergirl, and I thought Supergirl was terrible. I thought it looked nothing like what Supergirl usually is, this pretty blonde, and this girl is like this short-haired brunette, and just did not seem like Supergirl to me. And it's one of those things where, like, oh, they're trying to change Supergirl and whatever, and it's like, it didn't work for me. And maybe the worst thing about the movie is the CGI. It was one of the worst CGIs I've ever seen in a big blockbuster. It's supposed to be a big superhero blockbuster, and anytime they did CGI stuff, it looked so terrible. The worst is at the beginning. He has this building's, this hospital or something that is collapsing, I think, and there's babies, newborn babies in the baby ward or whatever, and he has to go save like these 10 babies or something like that. And so you see everything like in slow motion because he's going so fast. Everything slows down for you. And there's all these babies falling from the sky, and he's got to grab them and put them somewhere and save them. And the CGI babies, oh, it was so bad. Every time you saw the baby, it's like, wow, that does not look like a baby. It looked like just a really weird CGI character. And that was one of the worst things when I saw that. It took me out of the movie. I go, wow, that's some of the worst CGI I've ever seen. And then Supergirl, every time Supergirl was moving around real fast, flying around, I was like, wow, that's bad CGI. It doesn't look like her. It looks like a CGI character and not a real person. And there's also, at the very end, this is somewhat spoilers, but there's a scene where he goes back in time to try to change the moment and so they keep repeating the same moment because people keep dying. So he keeps going back in the past to relive the moment to try to save everybody. And because he's going back in time or something like that, Again, I don't get the science of it, but because he keeps going back in time, uh, all these multiverses start colliding together, and so then you see all these multiverses with different superheroes from the past, and so you see all the different Supermans from and Batmans, I guess, mostly Supermans, but you see like every actor has ever played Superman, you see him in some sense, but of course the ones that have either died or never were Superman, they're totally CGI characters and look terrible. It just looked you looked at it and go, wow, that looks like a really bad CGI character, and not like the people that are supposed to be. Anyway, so it was terrible. Yeah, all that stuff was horrible. Yeah, it definitely belonged. It definitely deserved to be a box office bomb, and I'm so happy it was because I don't want Ezra Miller to ever have any success anymore. So anyway, so that was the Flash. Um, I don't think I'm gonna get through all my movies. I'm starting to get tired, and I'm running out of water here. But I'll go through one more movie, and I'll have to save the rest for another stream, I think. But I'll go through my favorite movie actually, and that was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which I finally got around to seeing. This obviously did very well in the box office. Obviously, very hyped up or not hyped up. Very everybody was excited for the sequel to the first movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It came out a couple years ago, I think, and won the Oscar for Best Animated Film and did very well in the box office. And anyways, and so the second one was obviously very people were looking forward to. I wasn't looking forward to as much as other people actually, and I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it like I rented it or something, and I thought it was okay, but I wasn't totally in love with the movie. Like most people, like absolutely loved Into the Spider-Verse, but I was just kind of like, it was okay, you know. There's definitely some cool stuff there. The animation was very cool. Like it's definitely a new. Um, okay, oh yeah, I have Barbie in the thing, don't I? Okay, I'll talk about Barbie. I had Past Lives in there too, didn't I? Okay, I'll talk about a couple movies then. I should talk about them because I advertise them. Um, yeah, I'll talk about a couple more movies. But anyways, the Across Spider Verse. So when I saw Into the Spider Verse, I thought, yeah, it was okay. I didn't like some of the character designs of like Kingpin. I thought it was a terrible character design, and I didn't like the pig. It was just a little too much for me. The pig, spider pig, whatever. I was like, okay, I didn't need that. I loved the Nicolas Cage Nor Spider Nor whatever. I thought that was a great character, and of course Spider Gwen was great. Like those, like, it was like two or three good characters out of that show, out of that movie, anyways. And of course, it's like an origin story for the Miles Morales being Spider Man, whatever. Anyways, um, yeah, I like the animation. It's a really cool style of animation that I'm really starting to love more and more. I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that in other movies now, and I'm like, I really kind of enjoy this style. It's really cool movie style, anyway. So, yeah, so I wasn't crazy about watching the second one because I was just mad on the first one. While everybody else loved the first one, but obviously I had to watch it because it was huge. It made really good money. It was one of the biggest money makers so far this year, and everybody I talked to just loves this movie and thought it was great. The only criticism I heard though that it was like it ended on cliffhanger, and it kind of left you hanging. And we're gonna have to wait a couple years for the third one probably. But anyway, so yeah, I watched it and I loved it. Like I thought this was my favorite movie I would say so far this year. Really blew me out of the water. It was way better than I was expecting it to be. Um, uh, Again, partly the style, but also the like I said, the animation style was great, and I love that we see different multiverses, like Gwen's world, and then we go to this world where they're like in India, which I really enjoyed that. The India, like that was one of my favorite new characters was the Spider-Man in India. I thought that was a great character. Like he was a lot of fun. And then you get, of course, there's this whole base where you see like all these different Spider-Mans from different multiverses. Like that was really cool seeing like these different styles. Like that's such an interesting idea. I think, and yeah, so I like the animation styles and how it's different in each multiverse. Like that was a really cool idea. And they even go to multiverses where it's like anime or something, or where it's Legos, like it's Lego animation. And so that was a lot of fun what they did with some of that stuff. But but the story was really, really good. And they took stuff from the first movie and really consequences from the first movie affect the second movie so much that I really enjoyed how they did that. The fact that Miles Morales becomes Spider-Man, and then you find out that he was never supposed to be Spider-Man, like that was an accident. And because he became Spider-Man, that created a really dangerous villain that could destroy the multiverse. And so that was a really cool idea. And we get this great, actually really great villain, which I was not expecting, the Spot. And Jason Schwartzman plays the voice of the Spot. And this was a great character. He's a weird looking character, but at first he was kind of not. He was kind of, I don't know what's incompetent, but he didn't know his powers really that well yet. But then as the movie goes on, the Spot villain becomes more powerful, and you go, wow, this is actually one of the best villains I've seen in Spider-Man movies. I was kind of shocked. And anyway, so I love that how they did that whole the Spot. And Jason Schwartzman was so funny. Like that was it was a villain that he was dangerous, yet he was very funny. Like, and what I loved about the script was that I was laughing throughout the whole movie. I thought it was really funny. A lot of funny stuff happening, especially the Spot when there was the Spot and Spider-Man, going at each other. Oh, it was hilarious. It was hilarious. Like, I love when he one of the first shots. I don't know. I shouldn't spoil stuff, but he's trying to steal an ATM because he needs money, and and it's in a store, and he's trying to steal this, and of course the store owner is like trying to stop him, like, hey, you can't do this, and the guy, and he says something like, hey, this is my first robbery, don't make this hard for me. And I was like, that was such a funny line. Like, hey man, get off my back, this is my first time robbing a store. It's like, of course he's not gonna give you an easy time, you're not supposed to be robbing the store. Anyways, that was a great moment. I loved all that stuff, and the action is so good. Like the way they do action in these movies is better than I've seen in any other animation movie. So I mean, to me, the story was top notch. I loved the whole story arc of Gwen and Miles Morales. I thought there was really good story arcs there, and how the consequences of the first movie really affect the second movie, and even into the third movie. So that was really interesting how they did that whole storyline. Like I said, very funny. The action is really good. I mean, yeah, this was a great movie. Like I give it 4 out of 5 stars. It was, like I said, I think my favorite movie so far this year is what I'm saying. Uh, yeah, definitely. If most people probably checked it out already, I was kind of late on this, but yeah, definitely. If you haven't, yeah, definitely got to watch Across the Spider-Verse. One of the best movies of the year. Um, all right, I'm talking about Barbie as my sister. Yeah, because I think I put that on my thumbnail. I forgot, so I should talk about Barbie. That's definitely a big one. That's the biggest movie of the year. I am so shocked how this movie is the biggest box office movie of the year is beyond me. I don't get why this is so big and made so much money. But yeah, I finally got around to watching it, and I didn't want to go watch it because I heard the reviews when it first came out, and the reviews that I heard was that this was very liberal, woke junk, very feminist, very liberal, woke, feminist movie. Men are bad, women are good type stuff, and that's been so big in Hollywood right now that I was like, man, I don't want to watch another stupid, woke movie of feminism, whatever. And so I really didn't want to go watch this movie, but it's the biggest movie of the summer. It's the biggest movie of the year. So I was like, well, I have to watch it just so I can say, okay, I watched the big movie of the year. And I tried going into it as, unbiased as I can, tried to keep an open mind. But man, this is the dumbest movie I've ever seen. And I'm going to say this word a lot during this whole review because I can't think of a better word, but it's just so dumb. It's really, really dumb. The plot, the characters. Oh, I said in my Letterboxd my review that I feel so much dumber after watching this movie. Like I was like watching it, I'm like, man, I feel so dumb watching this movie. It is the worst plot, worst script I've ever seen. It is so horrible. If you've watched it, people love this movie. I maybe I'm the only one I'm not the only one, but I'm one of the few ones that's going to say this. But I thought this was such a horrible movie. And the whole plot, there's a Barbie world and there's a real world, And in the Barbie world is Barbies that are being played by people in the real world. And that's stupid. That's a stupid idea. I hate the whole idea. The premise is retarded. No, I can't say that word. Sorry, it's dumb. I shouldn't say that word. It's dumb. It's a dumb idea, dumb plot. I think I can still say dumb. That's not controversial. I don't think. Um, but yeah, it, I can't think of a stronger word. I'm trying to think of a stronger word than that, but that's the best word I can say. But yeah, that and the Barbie world is so stupid. She like flies through the air at times, um, and she goes to the beach. And there's the Kens, and the Kens just wait around for the Barbies because they love the Barbies. But the Barbies run everything. They run the Supreme Court. They're the Barbie president. It's run by the females. The males just wait around for the Barbies because they want the Barbies to notice them. And they tried to, and can't, what's his name? Ryan Gosling plays, one of the Kens. Everybody's called Barbie and Ken, so it's stupid because, like, how do you know who's everybody's named the same thing? But like he tries to impress her by going into the ocean, but the ocean's like made out of plastic, and so he bounces off the ocean. I'm like, what's going on here? Why is this happening? Um, Anyways, and so then she has to go into the real world because someone's playing with her that has negative thoughts, whatever. I don't quite understand how that all works, but and then there's a way for them to get into the real world. They get in the car and they get in a boat and they get in, anyways, but there's a way they travel into the real world, and I don't know, I just don't get all that. It's just I didn't care for any of that, but and it's just not funny. It's supposed to be a comedy. What's supposed to be the selling point, I think, of the movie is that it's supposed to be a comedy, and it was so unfunny, like cringe-worthy unfunny. Like I said about the other movies, I just cringed the whole time when they tried to make a joke, and I was like, "Oh God, they made a joke and it was bad." Like, "Oh, that was a bad joke," and there's another bad joke. Oh, these jokes are so terrible. It hurts my brain. These what they're saying, it just hurts. And yeah, so it was just a painful movie to watch. And um, they go in the real world. The real world is just as like the Barbie world's a fantasy world where nothing makes sense. Sorry. Uh, and then you go into the real world. The real world is like a fantasy world. The real world doesn't really seem like real world at all. Like the way people act is not the way people act in the real world. So I maybe that was their whole point, or their whole purpose was like to portray the world as a fantasy. I don't know. I didn't get that. And like there's stuff like she like comes in the real world, and then of course all the guys are like saying sexual things towards her, and because guys are just terrible human beings, and they're saying stuff to her and all this. And like she goes to some construction workers because the construction worker, because all the females, only the females have jobs in the Barbie world. And so she goes to some construction workers just because she thinks they're all going to be women because only women work construction in the Barbie world. So she goes to talk to construction workers. I forget why, but for some reason. And of course, it turns out they're all guys. And of course, as soon as she goes over there, of course, what do they do? The stereotypical construction worker thing. They start, you know, catcalling her, and it's just the stereotypical catcalling, which is like, wow, this is just so, you know, predictable and so like unoriginal. I don't know. It was just, it's like, oh, you gotta kid me. Um, Anyways, and you go through all that. And then you got Will Ferrell, the CEO. And what I didn't get is that Will Ferrell, who's the CEO of Mattel, I guess, and Barbie comes to talk to him, I guess, to fix something. Um, hey, Norn. Yeah, you're getting ready for the night shift. Well, thanks for tuning in, and hope you have a good night shift. Um, but I'm talking about Barbie right now. I think you like Barbie a little bit, Norn. More, I'm giving a bad review. I did not like it at all. But and yeah, Will Ferrell's the CEO of Mattel, and he knows about Barbie World. And that was like what? Like, how does people in real world, how, like, who all, only he knows, or how does he know there's this fantasy world called Barbie World, and how is it that you can get to each world? I Yeah, Will Ferrell was really the only thing I didn't like. Overall, I laughed and had a fun time. I did not laugh at all. Like, I didn't laugh at all in this movie. I had no fun. And yeah, Will Ferrell, I mean, he tried, and I can see some of the stuff. I think he was one of the better parts because I was like, okay, he's trying to be funny. Like I get, I like what Phil's trying to do, but I don't know. I just didn't get the whole like, this Barbie world and reality world and how they're able to coincide. It doesn't seem like that should be possible. But uh, and then even at one point, Will Ferrell, and he has all these execs around him. And at one point, he's like, "Oh, we need to go to the Barbie world." So I'm like, "So people in the real world can go to the Barbie world?" Like, it just seems like it shouldn't exist. But and how you do it? He just goes run really fast in this direction, and it's like okay. And next thing you know, he's like they're on a boat and they're on. Anyways, the next thing you know, they're in Barbie world. Like Barbie world's a real place you can get to. It shouldn't be like I don't know how to explain it. Like it's like going to heaven. Heaven's you can't just go to heaven. Heaven's something you can't go to right now until you die. So it's like it should be. I don't know how to explain it. Fantasy world shouldn't be a place that you just can go to physical. I don't know without something magically happen. I guess in some sense. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, all that. But yeah, and then Ken goes back to Barbie world and he changes it because he sees how men are respected in the real world. So he's like, oh, men are respected. I want to go back and to Barbie world and kind of take over. I guess have the men take over, like I guess like they do in the real world. But there's guy bosses, there's girl bosses in the real world. It's you know, uh, it's not so much a patriarchy like it used to be. But anyway, so he goes back to Barbie world, and like one day, like in less than a day, he turns everything around. And I don't get how that happened. How he made all the Barbie girls somehow subservient to the guys or something. I don't know. It just happens real quickly, and it's like all of a sudden you're like, okay, now he took over, which I kind of enjoyed. The only thing I kind of enjoyed was the fact that he sees a truck and he's like, "Oh, I want that truck," and that was kind of I would say it's kind of funny because he in the Barbie world now he has like a truck or something, and yeah, I wanted more of a mystical type of travel, yeah, something more magical than just running in one direction and then all of a sudden you're in Barbie world. Um, but yeah, what was I saying? Oh, I do like that because I was like, okay, I like the idea that the Kens are becoming more manly because they're very non-manly in Barbie world. But then all of a sudden he came to the real world and he saw manly things like trucks, and he's like, oh, I like trucks because men. I mean, I'm not a truck person, but most men are like, oh, trucks, I like trucks, and so I love that he brings trucks back, and he has this whole thing about horses, which I think was a little off because I'm like, I don't know if guys are into horses, girls are into horses, so like that didn't make sense. Like all of a sudden he was into horses, but I know it's because he saw a guy on a horse, a police officer on a horse, I think, and he was like, oh, horses are like manly or something. I don't know. And so he thought horses were manly, but to me, horses aren't necessarily manly. I mean, anyways, whatever. But I did like the truck that he brought the trucks in, and that they're drinking beers and like they're being more like guys. Like I was like, yeah, that's the way it should be. He's got influenced by the real world to bring it to the Barbie world, anyways. But stuff like that. And then the Barbies come back and they try, or Barbie, the main Barbie, Margot Robbie, she comes back and they try to try to change the power back to the Barbies and try power, not the Kens. And I don't get how they do it. It didn't make any sense. They get all the Kens jealous of each other or something like that. All of a sudden the Kens are like fighting like this big battle. And I was like, what is going on? I don't get why this is happening. This makes no sense why this would happen. I don't know. It's just whole movie didn't make sense to me. I just didn't think it was. I don't know. Any of it was good. Uh, and then the ending, I didn't get the ending at all. Just she's, you know, somehow the Barbie. I don't get the Kens get in a fight, and then while they're fighting, somehow the Barbies get back in power. They go to they rewrite the Constitution or something like that. I didn't get how that happened, but somehow and all of a sudden they're in power and the Kens lose, I guess. And then the main Ken, played by Ryan Gosling, is talking to her about oh, I'm nothing without you. Kens are nothing without Barbie, kind of thing. And she says something like, just be Ken or something. I can't remember now what it was. It was so stupid. It was something about just be Ken. And he was like, yeah, I'll just be Ken. I'm like, what does that mean? I don't get what that means. That's supposed to be something special, I guess. But I was like, I don't know what that meant at all. And it just sounds stupid. Oh, I'm Ken. And it's like, okay, what we're doing here? Where are we coming from? anyways, and the movie ends, and I don't know. I know everybody here, you guys like it. Everybody likes it. I thought it was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I didn't enjoy any of it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I saw it probably 2 days ago. Person enjoyed it. Okay, that's good. I mean, if you liked it, great. You saw something there that I can see. Again, it's supposed to be a fun comedy, I guess, and I just didn't get into the comedy part. And maybe I'm thinking too much, and that's my problem. I think too much sometimes when I'm watching movies about things not making sense, and maybe I shouldn't just enjoy it, not think too much about stuff making sense. I don't know. Um, so I'm sorry if you liked it, and I'm just trashing the movie, but that was just me. I just watching it. I was like, I mean, it wasn't like as bad as like I was bored. Like I wasn't bored. That was a good thing. Like I was my interest was piqued by how bad it was. I was like watching, going, wow, this is just really bad. And so like that's a good thing. It's not the worst movie of the year, just because to me the worst movies of the year are the ones that are really boring. Like I can't take a really boring movie. So I'll give it that credit that it wasn't the most boring movie. In fact, I'm giving it a 1 out of 5 stars instead of a half a star. I thought about giving a half star, but then I thought, no, this is better than some of the worst movies I've seen. Actually, this is not quite as bad as Theater Camp or Asteroid City. I thought were really bad. This was a step higher than that, so I'm giving it 1 star. So I'm giving it that, anyways. But still, it's just yeah. Let's see, my sister. I know she said something here. My favorite line was when Ken asked Barbie to bring him some brewski beers. I also like the dance numbers, but I agree it wasn't as funny as it should have been. Okay, yeah, like the most interesting part was when the Kens were going to war with each other, but they had. I'm trying to remember. I mean, okay, that was kind of funny. I guess I should say that was there was some kind of that was kind of a funny moment because they had kind of funny weapons, if I remember right, in them fighting. Yeah, they're kind of doing this dance fight, kind of like West Side Story style, if I remember right. And and he even yeah, and he's singing, and there's like a song Ken sing or Ron Gosling's like singing the song, and like he takes one guy and like gives him a noogie, and that's like his. That was kind of funny. I have to admit, like I enjoyed some of that stuff. But anyways, but yeah, sorry, did not like Barbie. Wasn't my movie. But I feel like I don't know. There's some guys in here that like it, and I suppose part of the problem, like my sister Abby, who's in the chat. I know Abby, you played with Barbies, and I remember we had like a cool Barbie setup at home when back in the first house we lived in, and I even played I think Barbies with my sister because I was like I'm 3 years younger, and so I wanted to play with Abby, so I was my older sister, so we played with like Barbies. I quickly started playing with GI Joes because I wanted to, I wanted figures that could shoot each other and kill each other. That was my thing. While Barbies you just play house and stuff, which I was like I don't care about playing house. I want people to fight each other. That's my thing. I'm a guy. Anyway, so just right away, just the fact that it's about a a girl doll definitely doesn't help with me. I guess it's already kind of behind just because of that, but I was still willing. If it can be funny, I can enjoy it, but I just didn't find it funny. It's one of those things where I guess it wasn't funny, and I didn't like the plot at all. I just didn't get it. Okay, all right. I'll end on a really good note though. Because I did put this in my thumbnail, so I should talk about this movie, and that is Past Lives. Um, Past Lives is a A24 movie, which for me, I'm not a fan of that A24 because it's a really indie movie company, but they're very popular right now. They won the Oscar last year for Everything Ever All at Once, won Best Picture, and that was an A24 movie. I thought that movie was terrible. So mostly all the A24 movies I watch, I think are terrible because there's these very slow moving indie movies a lot of times, and they do horror movies, which I don't watch, and so as soon as I see it's A24, I already think, oh, I'm not gonna like this movie because I don't like the studio. But this movie, Past Lives, has been people have been talking about it. It's definitely an Oscar contender from what I'm hearing. It's got a lot of buzz there, and everybody that's watched this movie, I've heard give a pretty good review, and some give it. There's a girl named Tracy. Her channel's Nerdy Girl or Nerdy Film Girl, and she says it's her favorite movie of the year. And there's been a lot of people that have watched it, and it's definitely like been very highly reviewed movie. Anyways, and if you don't know this movie, Past Lives, like I said, it's about this two Korean, uh, a guy and a girl, who grew up together kind of as kids, and they were friends as kids. And in fact, they kind of had crushes on each other as kids. But then the female, which I don't remember names, but the girl in the movie, her family moves to Canada, and so she moves away, and it's very sad because they were really good friends as these kids, and so they get separated. Anyways, and then it kind of goes like 19 or something years in the future. It goes into the future, and we go in the future, and he's still living in Korea, and she is now living in New York as a writer. She's like a playwright or something like that. Anyways, and she's looking at on the internet, and she finds her friend from the past on there, and he's actually was looking for her because he hadn't seen her in such a long time, and so he was like already searching for her or something like that, but her name changed a little bit or something. Anyway, they finally connect on the internet, anyways, and they start talking to each other through FaceTime, basically on the computer, and they kind of reconnect, and that's not where it stops, but that's kind of where kind of the plot really begins. Is they're connecting, and it seems like maybe there's a romance possibility between the two. They kind of hint at that, like they like each other. Only he's in Korea and she's New York, and they're not able to, you know, come see each other. And but you can tell, like when you watch it, you're thinking this is like a love story, like oh, this is love story between these two people. Um, that's what it seems like, and which is cool. It's like okay, this is kind of a cool love story, anyways, between these two individuals, and they're reconnecting online. And anyways, and then all of a sudden, maybe I shouldn't spoil everything, but I feel like I have to just to talk about the movie a little bit. But basically, I guess I shouldn't spoil what happens, but it didn't quite work out, I should say, between the two because they long distance. It doesn't really work out, and some more years go by where they don't really talk to each other too much or see each other, and then they reconnect again anyway. So that's why it's called Past Lives. Kind of well, there's more to it, but uh, and it's about these two people trying to reconnect. Only uh, I guess I have to spoil this part because maybe it's a major part, but I feel like it has to be said. Well, she ends up getting married anyways. She marries an American, and he's not married. He's still single. But he then comes the kind of the end part of the movie is he comes to visit her in New York, and they hadn't seen each other since they were kids, and they've only talked on the internet sometimes. But he comes to visit her because they hadn't seen each other, and so and the last part of the movie is just him visiting and them kind of going out together and talking about their past, and what happened to their lives and all this, and of course it's like it's interesting because you're thinking, oh, this is this really cool long distance love story thing, but then of course you're like, oh, she's married, so what's going to happen now? So it's like, are they going to fall in love and she's married? Is she going to leave her husband for this guy, or is it what's going to happen? So that was kind of an interesting idea that I wasn't expecting, and I hate to spoil it because that's kind of interesting part of the movie, but that's a big part to and and the husband's even kind of jealous of this guy because this guy's kind of younger and good looking. I shouldn't say younger, but he's this good looking guy who's from Korea, and they got a past together. So and they're kind of reuniting. So he's kind of afraid like they're gonna fall in love too. So he's kind of jealous, and but he anyway. So and there was kind of the hint that they like each other still. And there's this hint almost that they might, run off together or something like that. There might be a romance, but I won't say what happens at the end exactly. But just there's an interesting idea there, like what's going to happen, with this, relationship. And one of the interesting parts is just them talking about how, and the whole movie to me, and I'm going to say I really like the movie, and that's why I want to end on this is that I was really pleasantly surprised. I was not expecting to like this movie because everybody who reviews this movie says it's very slow moving and all this, but it's really good. And to me, slow moving means boring. Like, oh no, this is gonna be. And it's A24, so I'm like, I'm just ready for this to be a really boring movie, and that I was not gonna get into. But uh, I was pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed this movie. It was way better than I was expecting it to be. And again, and parts of it are in Korean, so you have to read subtitles, and parts of it are in English, so it goes back and forth between those two. But the dialogue is really well written. I think this is a really well written script. Like it definitely should be nominated for an Oscar for this script. The director, this who's Korean, I think, she directed and wrote the movie. And it's funny looking at it. This I think first movie she ever directed, and she didn't have like hardly any writing credits. So this is like a first thing she's ever done, and she's made a really good movie here. But yeah, it's really well written. Should be Oscar nominated for sure. Um, because the movie's dialogue heavy, which again, if it's too dialogue heavy, sometimes I'm like, oh no, like it's gonna be boring if it's too much dialogue. But it's dialogue heavy, but yet the dialogue is so good and so interesting that I was like hooked into the movie, into these characters, and I really felt for these characters and was like, I'm not sure who to root for exactly. I mean, at first I'm like, oh, I want them to fall in love, but then once you find out that she's married, I was like, well, I don't want her to leave her husband because her husband's actually. Well, sometimes you might do this thing where oh, she's in a bad marriage, and then he comes along, and then they fall in love. That could be a storyline, but that's not the storyline here. It's like she is in love with her husband. Her husband's a good person, and yet she's kind of loves this guy. So it's almost like she loves two different guys, And so what's she going to do? That's kind of the idea I think behind the movie in some senses. And I really like that. I thought it was interesting because there's some great dialogue scenes between her and her husband about this guy coming into her life and what's that going to do to their relationship and how anyway some really good dialogue of some intimate relationship that they have and what I love about the movie I guess and why I liked it is I love the whole idea behind they talk a lot about like what ifs and that's why they call it past lives because there's this whole you know Korean mystical thing about there's like we have there's like these multiverses where we have a talking about multiverses it's almost like there's this idea that there's a multiverse where we get together and we get married and have kids there's other lives that we're living in other universes it's kind of the idea obviously that's not true but it's kind of an interesting idea to think about like is there a life where we are together and we're happier there's all these different and it makes you think about your life and like there's so many choices I made in my life and what if I made a different choice what would my life be like today and it's kind of what I thought when I saw them when I was watching the movie thinking it is an interesting obviously idea introspective it's a very introspective movie I guess I would say it was really good about relationships and introspective on your life and I really enjoyed and because yeah you think like what if I didn't marry my wife that I'm married to now? What if I married somebody else? What if that? I had some other girlfriends that I thought I was going to marry, but they didn't pan out. We broke up, whatever. And this is my life, anyways. And and you think, oh, what if I married this person? Or what if this happened? What if I picked a different career choice? There's so many choices you make in life that shape your life, what your future is going to be. And then once you get there, you think, of course, because I'm 40 years old. What's funny or what's interesting about the movie is the three main characters, or I should say no, the woman and her husband are both 40 years old, and I'm 40 years old. Because I looked them up on IMDb, and we're all born in 1983. I think the Korean guy is a couple years older than me. I think he's like 42, 43. But if I remember right, maybe I'm wrong, but I do know those two were like 40 years old. They were born in 1983. So it was interesting to watch it, and because I'm thinking, oh man, they're my age, and this is what I think about too. Being 40, of course, you know, I'm old enough now to really, be nostalgic about the past, to really look at the past and look at all my life choices, and what's happened to me. And once you get to 40, you have that midlife crisis where you're thinking, like, oh, why can my life be different? Why didn't I do this or that? Kind of stuff, and there were a lot of regrets in your life. That kind of stuff happens, especially when you get to about this age. I think I'm at, and so I really felt kind of for those characters because we're the same age, and I was like, yeah, like what if I made different choices? Would they been better? Would they have been worse? I don't know. All I know is this is the choices and the events that happened in my life, and this is where it took my life, and this is where I'm at. And so you don't want to delve into the past too much. I mean, I think the idea is like it's fun to think about the past and think about all the what you could have done different. But then at the same time, you kind of have to go and they kind of talk about this in the movie, which I liked was that it's like, yeah, I could have done things different, but this is what happened, and this is what I'm going to make the best out of my life of what the choices I made. And I thought that was kind of a good message of like, yeah, it's like not everything in my life is great. There's some things I wish were different, but I can't change the past. This is my life. And I just have to do the best I can with what I have in my life today and not worry about what could have been, you know. And that's what I think about this movie. And yeah, some great moments of dialogue of them talking about that kind of stuff, I guess, in the sense of, you know, choices you make and how it changes your life, and looking at the past and wondering, you know, what kind of other lives I could have lived, you know, and all that. But yeah, so in that way, it was a really cool movie that really made you think and made you really think about your life and about your relationships and be very interesting. Anyway, so yeah, it was a really cool movie. Like I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5, which means it's a solid recommend in my book, anyways. And I don't know if I'll make it my top 10, but it'd be pretty close to my top 10 probably movies of the year, if not right outside the top 10. It's I definitely think I would say definitely watch it. It's true, it is a little slow moving at times, and there's Korean being said, and but there's subtitles you can read. Um, and uh, I don't think it was too long either. It wasn't boring. I didn't think it wasn't. It was paced fairly well. Um, but you just have to know that yeah, it's going to be. It's about relationships and it's a lot of dialogue and all this. So it might not be for everybody, but I'll say I didn't think it was for me, but I liked it. So if I liked it, I think a lot of other people will like it, in my opinion. So yeah, definitely, my opinion. Check out Past Lives. See, Drew. I haven't seen Past Lives yet, but I hear it's made. Yeah, same way for me. I was like, everybody keeps talking about it, and I was like, I hate. The problem is sometimes people talk big about a movie, and I'll watch it and I'll be disappointed because I had too much hype around it. But this was one where I was like, I really didn't think I would like it, even though people said it was good. I didn't think I would like it, and I did. So it was nice. It was nice to be surprised by something, not disappointed. So, anyways, that's my review on Past Lives. And I had a couple more movies on my list, but it's over 2 hours. I don't really want to go any longer, and it's like 10:30 over here, so I'll just end it there and cover the other movies at another time. But thank you to everybody watching this and anybody watches it after the stream. Appreciate all the comments from you, from my sister Abby, Slim Shaney, Drew, Norn. Really, really appreciate you guys tuning in, anyways. And yeah, so everybody, hope you have a really good weekend, and I'll talk to you later.